like a retrospective call that kind of looks at, usually it looks at like a sprint that we do, like a 2-week sprint, and then we do kind of a retrospective look at it, and then hey Rex, and then the next day we do kind of a look at the next sprint. And today what we ended up doing is Bear had an exercise that was basically looking at how we simplify the operations in the TEC, and what are some of the core functions that the TEC needs to continue to focus on in order to be sustainable and still mission driven. And so that's what we were doing. I was thinking that we might carry on some of that conversation today. Let me just think. I was hoping that Nate might be here. Let me just ping him and just see if he's interested. Hold on just 1 second, okay, everybody? Okay. Yeah, let's see if he shows up. In the meantime, it's probably worth just doing a quick update on what's going on with the curation service. So Maxwell and Gene, you were a regular for a while, and we haven't seen you for a little bit. So let me give you an update too on what's going on. So we've been exploring lots of services, potential services, and the one that we ended up going with in August is a curation service, content curation service. And basically the short version of it is that we want people to be able to come into the TEC Discord, post interesting articles about the field of token engineering, but also like specific categories like regenerative economics or decentralized society, governance, those kinds of things. And then what we're doing is, I'll share the screen, so because I'm not sure everybody's seen this. But what happens is you basically will take the signals that are coming from people interacting with these posts on Discord via emojis, and then we are working with some partners that they are still changing their names a little bit, but Common Sense is what they've been going by. So the Common Sense team, which is made up from folks from Tangible AI and the DAO Stack, and so they have built a bot that can scrape those, or not scrape, but basically sucks in those emoji responses and pulls them into a database. So let me just share this database so you can see what it looks like. So this is what it looks like on the back end. This is one view. This is basically syncing with an Airtable database now, which gives us a lot of flexibility. So you can see, like this is just a test message here, but you can see that there's like total 13 users on this one. This one has 7 users. Here's 9, and it breaks out, what the emojis were. I'll click on this one. This in this case, this is just a link. In some cases, and I think what we're hoping is that over time, hold on just 1 second. Filter by unique. So we can do all kinds of filtering. So this is filtering it for 5. If I were to put it for 3, 3 emojis, 3 unique emojis, you'll see that the screen changes, and now we have a lot more, right? So here's one. So the idea in terms of what we're going to do with this is that we hope to be able to then take these results and then work with the comms team with Acid Laser to use these as material for tweets, so that we can start creating kind of like new content for the TEC's Twitter account. And so like you could imagine in this here, that this could be like the basis for a tweet, and then we could then take, just copy this and paste it over into, we have another Airtable that feeds the tweets for the TEC. So you could then, take stuff directly out of here that the community finds is most interesting collectively, and then that becomes, tweets that we use to build engagement by highlighting people who have contributed in the Discord, the people who are sharing posts and the authors of those articles that we're linking to, etc. In order to try to like build some engagement by acknowledging these folks, and hopefully they'll retweet, and we'll build a little bit of viral action on Twitter. That's the basic idea. You can see also that this could be this view of the database. There's another view of this where it doesn't have all of the functionality. It's just simply a view without the ability to customize. So we could publish this in future versions. The other thing we could do is sync this with other Discord servers from other DAOs. And so that's where this gets really interesting. And that's kind of the next step, is looking at the kind of partnerships that we would have. So that's the brief version. Any thoughts or questions on this at this point? Or things I missed?
Looks neat.
Yeah, looks good. I've engaged with it a little bit. I saw the new category in there, the knowledge sharing. Is that where it is, right? In Discord?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly.
Good.
Yeah,
I like the format. I had never seen that format in Discord before, so I like the forum format in Discord. I think is beneficial for certain use cases like this. That's good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's a new feature in Discord, and it just showed up just right at the right time. So I like when synchronicity happens like that. That's usually a good sign. So oh, hey Nate, welcome. So I think I was just giving a quick update on the curation service, like where that's at. This is the latest view of it. I can share this with you later, Nate, so you can see the what the back end is starting to look like. But what I was thinking we would do, and this may be a little bit tough for you, Maxwell and Gene, because you weren't in this last call, but I think there's enough because Bear and NT and Nate and Rex and I were there. We can go over some of the conversations and feedback we got in this last call, where we were looking at kind of overall priorities, functional priorities, what's needed, what do we need to keep doing in a world where we're trying to simplify the TEC and its functions. So let's, I'm going to bring up that document. This is something that Bear pulled together as a way to kind of help us through this conversation. And I think it was very, very useful. So let me share this screen again. And maybe let's share the link again.
Yeah, I can share it.
Yeah, thanks, Bear. So Gene and Maxwell, like I said, it may be a lot to absorb, but you can look at this. Probably easiest once you get the link to just jump over and look at it from there, because it may be a little hard to read the screen.
And Gideon, can we explain this in the context for tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So, okay, everybody's got that link now, right? So the exercise today was really, Bear had done some work, and I'd helped a little bit at the end of just adding a few things, but he'd done some work with kind of laying out overall structure of like the functions. But don't pay too much attention to like these top level categories. They're more for us to just not feel overwhelmed. But we're looking at moving to like one team for the TEC operations. That's the context of this. And so, these won't be like working groups or anything like that. It will be more just making sure that we have all the functional areas that really matter taken care of. So this exercise today was to just look at all the stuff that seemed like it was important to continue to do and capture anything that was missing. And so then tomorrow, in the call tomorrow, we're planning to, and this is part of what I wanted to talk about today, is just get people's feedback on what's the best process for this, and maybe just brainstorm a little bit on what came out of today. But you can see these, if you look on the screen, my screen, you can like do these little stamps. So that's one way that we could actually do it tomorrow, is just basically have people use thumbs up, thumbs down, or question marks for things that they're not sure about, as a way to kind of give signals about what are the things that truly are essential to a sustainable, mission-driven operations for the TEC. So that's the background. Any questions or thoughts at this point?
When you talk about the meeting tomorrow, is that the sprint planning?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's at noon Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Or West Coast be 9 a.m. I think one question I have for everybody is, this is getting a little bit down into the weeds, but I think it's kind of important. As we try to get signals from folks, like how should we do that? Like, should we just make it so that like if you just want to put thumbs up, you could just put thumbs up. If there's nothing that you want to get rid of, then that's fine. Just leave it open. Or I was thinking this morning of like, wow, I wonder if we did something where it's like, if you're gonna do 5 thumbs up, you should really try to do 5 thumbs down, just to put some constraint, like resource constraint notion on there. So I'm gonna throw that out as like is that crazy? Is that useful or not?
Go ahead, Matthew.
I was just going to say, so I work at IBM, and we do a similar thing. They call it design thinking workshops and stuff like that. And so this is like similar to how we do voting, and they constrain it to the 3 votes. They don't typically do thumbs down. They focus on the thumbs up. But yes, restricting the voting for like what you're going to work on or priorities or stuff like that, I think is helpful. It focuses people.
Yeah, I agree with that. What I was going to say was more on how the exercise was structured, because I think I don't know if that's going to be an issue. Like, I don't know how granular we want that to be, but there's some on the notes. There are some bullet points that are, some of them are more broad than others, and I don't know how we should go about that. What if that's okay?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think, the signaling really should be a method for setting priorities. Because like if we get into like, any one of these, we can get very, very granular. Like the credentials management stuff, there's a lot of things that we need to do that we need to keep sustaining into the future that we really have to focus on as a group. And I don't think it can be on one person or 2 people to just hold that down. I think that there's a lot of consensus that needs to be had in terms of how do we manage credentials into the future? What are the best platforms to use? What can we afford within our budget? I think each of these sticky notes can get very, very granular, and I think we really, at this point, with this broad framework, we should just signal for priority sake. So that's just my thoughts.
when you say signal for priority, you mean
What things we need to focus on tomorrow? I mean, I assume that we will go into each one of these areas like in the next week or 2 weeks. And I think that if we can have calls that center around these areas, is really important to focus on each one of these sticky notes. Because I don't think it's going to be as easy as saying, hey, we need this, we don't need this. I think there's room for nuance in saying, maybe we do need this in the future, or maybe we need to consider this as a long-term infrastructure piece or whatever it may be. But I think that just signaling get rid of it or keep it is not the right way. But I think we should really prioritize what needs to be focused on in the immediate short term.
Very quickly, I'm just thinking tomorrow's call could be done in two steps. I think the first one is sort of just agreeing on the bare minimum, because and I think we kind of sort of agree already on a lot of stuff. It's just more making it clear that we want this, and this to that we want to keep funding this, and this. But then the second part, I think, instead of locking in short-term stuff, we should try to come up with a bit more of a medium to long-term strategy of some sort, because we've done similar exercises a few times already of trying to just deal with the next few weeks, and we end up in the same spot. And so if we can sort of agree on what we really want to focus on, say for the first quarter of 2023, for example, and sort of try to build a small roadmap based on that, and then we have more, we have something more clear instead of trying to run into this exercise always. Because I think there are a few directions there on this strategy in economic development that I'm not sure we can do all of them at the same time, and so it would be great to agree on something, have some kind of deadlines or whatever, but more mid to long term, instead of focusing on the next few weeks, because I don't think we are in the position to do much anyways.
Can I summarize what I think you said, NT? Because I think that's really interesting. So I think what you're saying is do it in two steps. Or like, I don't know if it's two steps, but break it into two categories. The first category is like the bare minimum things that we know we need to keep doing, and then the second category is longer term, really more like projects that we're maybe not doing, or maybe we need to change, that we need to think about, and we need to build some plans around. Is that a fair summary, or did I get it wrong?
Yeah, right. I think categories is a good example. So there are things that we want to do, yes or yes, like, I don't know, probably Twitter and some other stuff. But then in order to work towards a common goal that we don't have already, we have to define it, and then we'll know what we want or what we don't want. Because at this point, we can pick and choose small projects, but they might lead up to nothing at the end of the day, and that's, I guess, what we don't want to do anymore.
Mm-hmm. What do others think about that general approach?
What was that? I didn't get the last part.
He was asking what others thought about that general approach. And I don't mind it. I think it's a really good approach. But the one thing about the long-term goals is that it requires another level of consensus among the community. And that means token holders kind of, going through the advice process all together. What I'm most interested in particular right now is just getting a cadence down. How do we implement our sprint planning? How do we have our meetings? How do we organize ourselves to have these conversations? I think once we get into a pattern and a certain type of behavior that is different than traditional working groups that we've had in the past, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I also I think I agree with Nate, because some of the thoughts that I was going to say is I think it's important to define the what, like all the different functions that we really need, and then after that I think to figure out how and who are gonna do all of this. This is something that Gideon was mentioning to me yesterday, because I feel that if we start if we jump right into the detail and into the conversation right now with this structure that we currently have, let's say for example for calls, I don't think it would be that efficient, right? I don't think we can have just like 1 or 2 calls every week to discuss everything. I think we need to able to to come together, to focus, to really become more effective with time and with all the efforts that we put in. And to do that, I do think that first would be important to really try to make a simple list of the things that we think are actually super essential. I don't think, maybe not to say just in the midterm, long term, but just to keep the Discord server running, like the TC still working, to have some activity. I think right now we've been getting close to that kind of I forgot the word, but like that kind of level of uncertainty. So I think if we can nail that list down into just like really concise activities, that could be a good start. Now, in the way to do it for tomorrow's call, I'm still not sure. I'm still trying to think, and I was listening to what you guys were saying, and I don't know if it would be a good idea or if it would make any sense. What you guys think to maybe try to kind of like do some type of what's it called, like some attempt right now during this call, like with the people we are here, try to maybe start a similar exercise to what we would be doing tomorrow, and see how we feel, what feedback can we come up from it, more in the aspect of the actual exercise, on how we manage things. I just feel that doing it might give us a better clarity on how could we proceed tomorrow. But I don't know if that would be a good idea.
Just before anything, I just want to very quickly comment on respond to Nate's comment on long term strategy, because I think I'm right now very very strong on we focusing on a longer term strategy for a few reasons. First of all, we have to take care of and listen to stakeholders and everything, but like it's not like we have a better strategy now. I don't think we have any strategy right now. And other thing is about bureaucracy and stuff. Because I think we've become very bureaucratic. Things move quite slow. Um, and there's no need for that because we actually are at the sort of the beginning of the, I don't know how's the curve called, but like an innovation curve. And at first we need to be able to move quick. um, Other point is the Ostrom's principles. At the end of the day, we are here just a few people day by day, and we should at in some range, obviously, we should have some agency to be able to decide what we want to do, especially in this case that we are burning money without anything particular to do. uh, and then just because we are sort of winding down a lot of our expenses and exercises and whatever, we need to know what are we going to do long run if we want to know what are we going to do in the short term. Like if like I'm for example I'm very interested in sort of working as a kind of regranter or whatever, and that's going to require some special needs. But if we go a more um, service building kind of way, that's going to need others. And how what are we going to do? Are we going to just go week by week, matching little pieces and discussing a lot of on what are we going to do, what are we going to do, or are we going to like we have to lock down something at some point and then work towards that, because especially these last months have been very confusing. We've made these exercises a few times already. I don't even know what we're going to do.
I agree with that. I think you're right a lot, and especially long term. I think giving us direction is really important. I just want us to get our feet underneath us first, and so like perhaps we can go ahead and dive into this exercise. Gideon, I don't know if you had a plan for that, but
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to jump into. Let me just say one thing. I'm a big believer in separating job descriptions that are specific to individuals from what in like corporate world would be like position descriptions or roles, right? So roles are like functions that the organization needs to have done regardless of who's doing them. And a job description can combine lots of, it basically can look at the individual and say, oh, you're really good at writing and you're really good at, process flow or whatever it is, like thinking about processes. Let's mix the different functions into this job, right? To this individual's job. It gives a little bit more flexibility. I think what we're kind of doing right now is looking at the functions and saying, we need the raw ingredients to be able to start to construct some roles that will be important for us going forward. And I think it's just so complicated. This beast is just so complicated that I do think this idea of like, let's just maybe take 10, 15 minutes right now to just focus on like, to keep the doors, to keep the lights on and to keep this place functioning. Like, what are the things that we're doing right now that we know that if we stop doing it, things would actually start to break, like things would not be good. Then I think that will really help us to pull together like a first draft of roles. And then the other bucket of things is like this future projects, like, that then ties back into strategy and things like that. Then those become buckets of like, hey, these are some questions that as an organization we need to tackle, and then we can go and prioritize those questions, those strategic questions, and then that will probably end up updating the roles in like a second wave. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. For me, makes sense. Yeah.
Does that seem like, so starting with like the basic thing, I think if we went into the meeting tomorrow and just said like, we've done some pre-work, like here's the set of things that we feel like are essential to just keeping the operations going, and start there and get some confirmation from folks, like, do you agree, do you disagree, and then maybe start to like break out. Maybe what we can do in this call is use, let me just see here. Use a star as like essential things that we really have to keep going. And then use, I don't know, we can use this circle or something. Or, yeah, use a question mark as things that are like things that we need to come back to later as kind of a strategy. People good with that?
Can you repeat the stickers?
Yeah, so I'll show you. So use the star for things that are like, okay, multi-sig manage, let's see, credentials management, right? Like that's something I feel like, if we're not doing credentials management, we're going to be in trouble. And then I would use the question mark for like, common pool stewardship, like the things that we're going to need to do to kind of like change that, right? Or maybe it's like, there's pieces of this that are questions, and then there's some that are actual stars, right? Is that clear?
Yep, makes sense.
Everybody good with that? Everybody?
Also, I'm thinking, I don't know if it would also help, maybe to also kind of like have in mind or define like a timeline where we think like these functions that we're selecting, when should they be covered, or what's the deadline for them to be covered. And I don't know, I'm thinking, like, I think all of these like super essential things, they should be figured out at least at the for the end of the year, right? Like 2 months. I think that should be some good timeline. I don't know if that would make any sense or if it would help.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the things we're identifying as essential are like things that it's like if we don't have this covered by the beginning of November, like if nobody's doing that thing, we're in trouble. Like, so it's like, um, yeah, and maybe there's stuff that's in the middle, but
Yeah, sounds good. I like that. Yeah, just to have that clear, right? That this is urgent. That we can't just like wait a week, 1 week after the other to figure this out.
yeah. Are people good with this? I mean, we could spend a lot of time arguing about like the details of it, but I just want to make sure, does anybody have like strong negative reaction to this as a use of time?
No, that sounds good to me.
Okay, let's jump in. So just to clarify, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. This is not a question of like, is this important? This is a question of like, if we stop doing this right now, we are gonna. It's like not projects that we can do in the future, but these are like things we're doing right now that if we stop doing, it's going to be a problem. Okay. Oh, hey everyone, I'm sorry. I'm looking at all these question marks. I think it's sending the wrong signal. I think we should switch the question marks to, let's switch it to heart. Because if people look at this tomorrow, they'll be like, is this, the question mark sounds like, is this even important? And that's not the signal we're trying to give. It's like, this is important, but it's like, it's a project that we're going to need to come back to later. Okay? So please switch to hearts if you've already done question mark.
Just a question. Wait, the hearts were for the middle priorities, right? Not the question marks.
Correct.
Okay.
We're replacing the question marks with hearts.
Okay. So we're basically doing P1, P2, P3. That's what we're doing.
No, it's just right now we're just doing two. There's two. The star
Yeah.
is like, got to keep it going, otherwise we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Hearts is like, this is important and we need to come back to this. As a
Yeah,
project. Yeah.
As in like in the sprint organization and my company, we split up stuff to P1, P2, P3. Like priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. That's basically what we're doing.
And did we say we were limiting to how many we were voting for, or?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that we'll use this as an exercise in trying to really just identify. Right now we're just trying to kind of like save some time tomorrow by kind of preloading the stuff that's like, these are essential services, and then these are some things. So we'll probably consolidate this a little bit, and we'll probably end up doing this again tomorrow. But this is just like a pre-exercise to see how this works, and then also to give us some signal. So it's a little bit inefficient, but I think it'll be good. I think it's important.
It's good feedback. Feedback on the process.
Exactly.
As long as you're not voting multiple times on the same one, I think we're gonna be okay.
Oh, I think I did that once. Let me find it. Oh yeah, that one. Hey, Gideon, you voted twice for partnerships. What's that about, eh?
I did.
Yeah.
Oops.
you got-
I'll go. Hold on.
Hey, and one way to, especially I'm assuming the meeting tomorrow is going to have more people, which is going to make it harder to kind of organize this. Instead of the stars or instead of one of them, you could use I see the stamp, they have your icon, right? And then you could very easily see if people were voting for multiple. So for priority, you could say, hey, use your own stamp. I don't know if we want it to be anonymous, but if you hover over it, you can see who did the stamp anyway. So using your own stamp in the bottom left there might be a way to minimize some of the confusion or people voting twice, or just make it easy to see where people are voting.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Okay, we'll think about that. I think that could be good, actually. Yeah. And just to clarify, my double vote for the partnership, I was actually putting 1 star on one particular partner, and another. Yeah, not trying to cheat.
I see. Very interesting. Oh, that's what you did. Okay. Whoops.
Okay, I'm going to recommend that we stop here. Of course, we could like fill this out in like great detail, but I think that's not really the point. Let's use the remaining 15 minutes to just see what we're learning here. I'll tell you a couple things that are popping out to me. Is that it feels to me like the stars are more specific. It's like there are specific functions, bullet points, where stars become more relevant. But like the hearts, in terms of like categories of decisions that we're going to need to make strategically, those feel like more like sticker level, like category level. What do people think about that as a thesis? Is that true?
I really think that, as this is being the first, attempt at this exercise, I think, after we get a couple of rounds of this under our belts, each section will be kind of more understood, and instead of like general desires, we'll actually have specific tasks. And I think that, this is a really good system to really just test out right now. I liked it.
Yeah, and I think your comment speaks to people feeling like stuff that has to be done now. We have specific ideas of, hey, if this specific thing falls apart, it's going to be bad. Whereas, hey, I'd like to work on these projects has the benefit of, because it's not so urgent or not so immediate, being a little more general. So I think that speaks to your comment around stars being specific and hearts being more general.
I do agree with that. I think that, for example, well, I'm the only person that put like a second priority on partnerships, right? I put way more than one heart there, but my reasoning behind that was that maybe there's dependencies missing, as in we can't jump into partnerships in my eyes until we have economic governance, but that one hasn't been given much love. Oh, so that sort of stuff. It's interesting, but it is interesting that, yeah, it kind of trims us to half of what we've got here very quickly.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. But I think this is the imperfection of the human brain. Like, we're going to do an exercise like this, and there'll be things like that exactly. Like, yeah, you can't really do partnerships without thinking about like the governing framework for those economic relationships, right? And so I think then when we start diving into like the actual projects in the future, we'll have the time to be a little bit more rational and go like, oh shit, like we can't do this without this. And so yeah, but I think one thing that's like what's really interesting is in the call, and you can see all the hearts, like partners, like it's very clear that we are not investing enough in partnerships, right? So that's good data. Yeah, you can see the website, like there are some clear priorities here. Other observations from people?
I'm also thinking, like, for example, on the org development post-it on the direction, I feel that maybe there are some post-its that could be separated. Like, for example, from here, maybe it is more relevant to revisit the MVV than the code of conduct. No, just to say something. So maybe just kind of like having them in separate post-its could provide people more ability to select what they really want to choose. And I don't know if that repeats with other post-its too, that maybe it's something more, maybe it's something inside the post-it that people want to signal.
Well, one I'm just going to throw something out. and honestly, I'm not sure this is a good idea. So it's, but I'll throw it out anyways. So, maybe what we do is we take a look at what we've got here, and we look at the places where there are a lot of stars, and I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I'll just say what I was going to say, and then you give feedback. What I was going to say is, what if we took like this map and put it into 2 submaps, right? Still using this same structure, but basically just repeating it twice. And the first one is basically, things that we need to keep doing, right? We need to absolutely keep doing, and then we can use people's stars and have it be a little bit more detailed, and then have like the other stuff that's more heart centric be just higher level. I don't know. There's something there, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
I think this is just an issue of scale. So like, we have competing priorities among these different function groups, but I think once we get into one of these, we get really granular, and we have to set priorities for the tasks that are necessary in order to accomplish it. So there are a lot of little antecedents that need to happen for us to, like, for example, the credentials management or multi-sig management. This is competing with the needs of the curation service. And so when we get into a room to say, hey, what is our priorities? It really, there's cross dependencies on certain aspects of the granular tasks. Do we have the documentation? Do we have the people willing to work on it? And so, I mean, if it comes down to sprint planning, I think we take a look at each one of these sections and like highlight what are the tasks of these priorities that we've set that we can accomplish in the next sprint, and say, we have 2 from the strategy, 2 from the operations, 2 from the communications, and just use this as kind of like a process to just practice the sprint planning method. But that's just my thoughts on it. So I'll pass it on.
I kind of like what you said, Gideon. I was thinking maybe we would do we could do something like what we did on SoftGov for the SWOT analysis, but which was kind of a table by person, and everyone sort of put things based on this. But I think that would take a lot of time. If we are if we are a considerable amount of people tomorrow, and so I think having stars for things that we want to keep now in hearts for uh, coming up with longer term strategy would be great, and would solve for both the needs that I personally think we need to solve.
I'm also thinking, I'm liking this idea of creating like some submaps from these and leave this more as a general kind of like first brainstorming session, and then maybe having one for the stars, maybe one for the hearts or something like that, but still leave it in a more like general level. And I think we could really define like the I think that the key would be to define this, to create this map with all the functions with stars, right, from the people tomorrow during that call. And then I think, I don't know, I think it would be a lot of work in a way, and maybe also a little bit time consuming, but I think it would be also necessary to maybe take that map and then just start revisiting each of the areas and have like a dedicated call maybe next week for one of these areas, and just like going deep into each one of those and kind of like trying to go into more detail into analyzing each of the functions that we define there. But now they will be more like filtered, right? Because they will be all they will be all defined in the code tomorrow with stars, and then next week we could like jump right into like more detailed conversation into each one of those. I don't know if that would make any sense.
Yeah. I agree in that we do need to set out a number of calls to kind of look at specifically the ones with a number of stars, right? So the one with the most stars is what? Credentials management. So yeah, there probably should be a call focusing just on credentials management, multi-sig management, management of platforms, etc., and where they can kind of set out a roadmap to kind of do it properly, not like we've done so far, right? And or to do it in a better way now that kind of Septi, which was the guy that kind of had kept that afloat, is now less involved. And so the same thing with kind of partnerships. But when we do separate into these subgraphs, do bear in mind that we're missing the dependency graph in this kind of flip chart fashion. So wherever the I'm sure there's more than that. Just the economic governance one. Say, but for the communications, the Twitter strategy is a subset of the comm strategy. So clearly, our views on this is that we only need to care about Twitter, but in theory, comms, like Twitter is dependent on comms and whatever the Twitter strategy is, and whatever the curation so the curation strategy sits in the curation service Twitter strategy sits in Twitter, and the Twitter strategy sits in comm strategy. So it's like sort of untangling the dependency graphs on this is something that needs doing, and maybe pushing it all to a similar level of detail so we can actually have a discussion.
I think it's really important to point out that everything that we're looking at right now, the entire scope of this, was handled by 7 or 8 different working groups. And now that we're changing this to consolidating it, we have to think in a different way and work in a different way. And so I agree with Rex, like looking at this priority chart, like multi-sig management, credentials management, top of the list, let's knock it out. Let's chip away at each of these areas. And that's the way we have to kind of, adjust to a new method of working. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that, and then, keep revisiting this scale and say, hey, what are our priorities again? Let's get granular during the sprint planning of those, whatever we choose, and knock it out. But yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge that this used to be handled by a lot of different groups. Now it's going to be handled by a single group, and we have to adjust.
There's no way that's going to be more powerful, right? I think that we.
Hey Rex, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we have 1 minute, so let me just ask this. Can people go another 10 minutes after the hour? And if you can't, I completely understand, but I feel like if we just cut it off right here. So I think it's time for us to reach some conclusions at this point. Can everybody stay another 10 minutes?
I'll stay for a couple more, but I've got something at 7. But I'll stay for the.
Okay. Let's leave it at this. We're going to go for another 10 minutes. If you have to drop off, completely understood. But let's try to bring this home. One thing I'm taking away is this stuff here, operate the places with a lot of stars. We've got to. Okay, this is my conclusions. The places with a lot of stars, we probably need to fill out some roles there and define those roles. And we probably need to figure out how we have those conversations, how we keep those conversations going. To your point, Nate, how do we keep that going? And I think the places with a lot of hearts go into some type of bucket that's like a planning bucket, that's like we come back to it some other point, and we say these are the things we got to knock out, over the next, we've got to prioritize these over the next couple months, and then start to knock them out over time. And probably define some roles where like there's somebody that is accountable for kind of a general area, even though we may swarm. I think it's going to be really important to like keep some person who's accountable for that general area. That's just a kind of like a working hypothesis. And I guess what I'll say is for tomorrow, I feel like outcomes for tomorrow. I feel like if we came out of the call tomorrow with a clear sense from the bigger group that's like, yes, these are the things that if we don't keep doing, things start to break. So just like, that's the first goal. And so if we can maybe leave this map, as you're saying, Bear, leave this like this and create a copy of this down below where we just like we just highlight the places with a lot of stars, and then ask people to add back things that they think are missing. Do you think that would work?
Yeah, I think that could be an option. And right now, I was also thinking, would it be also worth it to maybe instead just like delete all the stars and hearts and do this exact same exercise like we did today, but tomorrow with everyone, and then after that just create the sub maps right there, and just like start like copying pasting the post-its and collectively creating that map once again. Would that make sense? Or do we think it's important that the progress we did today and the realizations we did today, we keep them for tomorrow for people to see? I don't know. I'm thinking on how the people that were not here, how would they feel? Would they feel that we made progress and now it's easier to kind of like focus on what we already marked? Or would they like to be also take part of the whole process of the stickers?
I think it's a really good point. No, I think even though it's not as efficient, sometimes you have to go slow in order to go fast. So I think what we can do is just let's do this. Let's keep this up and say we wanted to record this. We wanted to keep this because there was a bunch of people who did a bunch of work on this. But let's take an exact copy of it and just run the exercise again tomorrow below this in the document. That way everybody has a chance to participate in that and feel some sense of ownership about those decisions. And we just do the wave of information, and then we try to take it to the next step, which is basically defining what that means in terms of some of the other things we've been talking about. I think that would be good. What do other? I mean,
so
yeah.
I guess I just want to say, is there a goal for tomorrow to actually have a sprint plan, or do we want to continue with the sense making in terms of priorities? Because I think if we commit to this, I think we can commit hard to it. But I think that if we want to have a sprint plan, then we need to do that as well and prioritize that as well.
I'm sorry, Nate. For some reason you cut the first part cut out. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So I think I'm just asking the question: Is the goal of tomorrow to end up at the end of the day with a sprint plan for the next 2 weeks, or are we going to continue with the sense making in terms of priorities? Because I do think there's some steps that we should take in terms of highlighting the areas we want to to focus on if we're going to have a sprint plan.
My sense is that we should relax the sprint plan for right now because, I mean, just temporarily, and get the broad buy-in. Basically, allow people to go through the exercise we just did, and then early next week reconvene, maybe a smaller group, maybe the whole group. We can get feedback from people tomorrow, but reconvene and say, okay, the next thing is we're thinking of double tracking this, like 2 tracks. One is the near term things that we just cannot drop, and we need to pull together. Is it a sprint? I don't know. Like we talk about what that looks like, but that's like one meeting, and then there's another meeting that's like, that's more the kind of longer term planning kinds of things that are less urgent. Does that seem?
Yeah, I guess there's just one thing that I would like to, request from everyone by tomorrow, if we could figure out a schedule, something that's consistent for all of us. That way we're not so confused about what meetings are happening, what meetings are not happening, and we can get into a kind of pattern of engagement.
Well, what do you think about just using the steward's calls for that?
We can do that as well.
I mean, that was one of the things that Livy was suggesting, and I think it's like that's probably a good thing. Like, figure out a ritual where we can actually honor the transformation of the steward's calls, and then just basically kind of start practicing this idea of an integrated, swarm.
I think we
Also-
can.
Go
very
ahead.
quickly,
Sorry.
we can even think of tomorrow as a sprint planning for making sense of TEC on this new phase. I think that's it. Kind of just kind of preparing, and maybe not as strict as a 2-week sprint planning, but I think we it's about time we enter a phase of just cooling down, making sense, instead of always trying to make something for the 2 weeks.
Yeah, also, something simple that I think we could also do, and maybe we could talk about it tomorrow, is just trying to organize and coordinate like the Google Calendar from the TC with all the calls, and if the stewards are there from the working groups, just like, let's say, like, are the working groups still gonna have like that weekly call, or maybe not, so we can just like start deleting and cleaning up that schedule. And then instead of those calls, maybe we can start adding other calls that we think are important. Maybe not like fixed calls, but more like sense-making calls. Like, I feel those are the ones that we need the most. And if we need more than maybe just the calls that are right now scheduled for stewards, maybe we can use the time slots from other working group calls, at least until we go through this transition. I think that would be an option.
I just made a note in the people coordination, like cleaning up the calendar and clarifying community-wide calls. I think that's something we missed, but yeah. Okay. We're out of time, so let's do. Nate, I think about this idea of transforming the stewards calls to kind of just keep this process moving, because some weeks we have like 2 of those calls, some we have 3, so they're like, that's precious time that we could be using to move things forward, and I think it will make those calls feel a lot more productive.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's really, really important in terms of getting everybody consistently, just expectations, and allowing them some consistency throughout the week in terms of the mental capacity of like contributing and
Yeah.
getting this back into a pattern of things. So,
Well, do you want to? Can you follow up with Tam and Livy on that?
yeah, I can.
And then I really like Livy's idea of the ritual thing. I think that's good. So I think tomorrow, basically, Bear, can we just make a copy of, just keep this so we don't lose the knowledge, and then just make a copy of it down below, and then just run the process again?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'll do that.
And then the conclusion at the end of the call will be, hey, we're going to split this into two streams, like two activity streams. One is, keeping things moving, keeping the lights on, and just making sure we're not dropping anything that's essential. And we'll figure out the detail, like we'll come up with some detailed plans for that, including like what the roles look like. Not assigning people at this point, but just like assigning what the functions are. And then the longer term one is the kind of like strategic planning bin, that yellow bin. In a way, we're kind of like moving some of the stuff into that yellow bin. Okay. I think that's good. And I'm sorry we ended up going a little bit long. And Gene, it's great to see you again, or see your mouse. And Maxwell, nice to meet you. Yeah, feel free to drop me a note. If, I don't know what your interests are, but feel free to drop me a note if you'd like.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Okay. All right, everybody. I feel like this is super productive. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, appreciate it, Gideon. Bear, thanks.
Your leadership on driving this.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think we're moving slowly, but we're moving. So I think that's good.
Yeah. All right, everybody. See you later.
Right,
Thanks. See you later. Bye.
Yeah.
Cheers.